How's everybody doing?
Pretty good.
Now, I saw about 6 to 7 posts about the project plan. Everyone gonna submit theirs by the end of the week or something like that? Okay. For those of you who have submitted ideas, would anyone like to come up here just for a couple minutes, just give a 2-minute spiel on why they chose what they chose, what industry or market their project is gonna be in, and maybe some of the assumptions or potential challenges with this plan? Volunteers, yeah, great, come on.
Should I bring a laptop with me? Because in case you want like a slideshow or something.
Yeah, it's up to you. If you got something to prepare, sure, but come up here and give it a 2-minute spiel.
So, professional wrestling. I mean, everyone here has heard of the WWE, right? I mean, whenever you turn on the TV, sorry, it's morning. You see things like WWE on USA or Fox, or even AEW on TNT or TBS, and those are considered like the big powerhouses of wrestling in America. But the thing about American wrestling, with mainstream stuff, is that it's a bit more entertainment oriented, you know? Like, it's more emphasis on characters and stuff outside of the matches itself. And from a sports perspective, it's a bit outlandish at times. It can be good, but still, this is where my idea comes in. Pretty much creating a wrestling company that's not just any wrestling company, but a legitimate competitor to the top powerhouses in the United States today. That presents more of a serious environment, more of a sports-oriented environment. And ladies and gentlemen, this is New World Wrestling, or NWW for short. And the goal of NWW is to pretty much, again, create a different, more countercultural wrestling environment. Again, create more of that sports event appeal. Even bring in elements of other combat sports, or even Japanese wrestling, like Red and Blue Corner, which is common in all other combat sports, you know, boxing or MMA. And pretty much the goal is to have create more of an environment that brings more variety to the American scenes, especially with the mainstream stuff. And that is my idea.
All right, excellent. I know you put a lot of thought into this because you're in my other class. What do you think, just assumption based, are some of the challenges you get in demand, some of the challenges in the process of making this realized into a thing, that some of the hurdles that you're gonna face coming into it?
Okay, thank you for asking that. So pretty much, some risks would be trying to break into the top companies of the wrestling scene, because again, this would be more countercultural, different from the norm. When you watch like WWE or AEW, it's kind of the same thing, more or less. And with this company, it's a bit of a different environment. So, on one hand, it could be a bit hard to get fans to come over and watch it because we're so used to watching one thing. You know, it's like being used to like Marvel movies for so long that it's hard to like maybe get into like the Batman or the Dark Knight trilogy or something even more gritty on, say, like DC. But other than that, there's other risks such as, you know, trying to get talent, because you have to get talent, especially, and also anything related to medical coverage, any insurance and whatnot. And yeah, however, I do think that could be an opportunity though, in regards to the fans, because while some fans may not be into it, others might be, because some fans might not be into wrestling today, or some people might not even like wrestling because they're used to one thing for so long and they didn't even know that could be presented in another way. I'm sure many of you are not wrestling fans. I mean, I'm sure all of you aren't, but maybe that's because you're used to something that's a bit more outlandish. So I do think while it's a risk, it's a possibility to maybe just even make new fans.
Excellent. Any questions? Well, you gotta have some questions, something that you're curious about.
Yes.
Yeah, so, you know, with WWE, so, you know, they got the flashy characters and all that, you mentioned how it's gonna focus more on like, you know, professional side of wrestling. But are you totally throwing away the character aspect?
No, not really. Instead of like, more outlandish characters, more somewhat down to earth characters. I did mention that there will be some elements of Japanese wrestling brought in. I like to highly praise it because it's simple. It's more straight to the point. You know, some of these characters in American wrestling history are legends, like The Undertaker, who's the zombie mortician, or just throwing him out there. But, you know, in Japanese wrestling, it's not as much on the flashy character, but more on the athlete, you know. It's not, there are good guy and bad guy type stories, but there are also stories of just people who are just athletes, who don't have much, but prove a lot with their athleticism. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. I think it's a phenomenal idea, what you have. Just to throw out maybe some things that can help you as you create the plan. We think of barriers to entry, huge capital intensity, right? Getting in, because you're gonna get people who may have already had contracts previously with WWE, or you may get some new guys, right? So you gotta pay them adequate money. Number two is marketing, right? Are you affiliated with people who think you're gonna be affiliated with the WWE? Or are you trying to create a UFC of wrestling, right? Trying to make it more serious based, maybe in some way. Other part is like that goes to marketing, is the orchestration of characters, right? So you're like, well, WWE is theatrical. So they have to rotate characters a lot. They're like, hey, people didn't respond as much as this guy in his story, so we don't see him anymore, right? Or people really like Undertaker, right? They want to see more of him. All of that. And also capital intensive for, where you're gonna be located. It's gonna be arenas, just like here, All-State Arena and stuff like that. I used to go watch WWE. So think of all that stuff in your process. Be like, well, that's a huge amount of investment. You're talking about being the first mover of kind of a different company doing something the first time. So that's gonna be a lot of money you need to come up with as well. So, but what else? Anybody see any other obstacles or challenges for his plan? Feedback.
Yeah.
So you mentioned more of a sport aspect of wrestling, where it's, I guess, more of like the typical wrestling you would see in like high school and college, or sumo wrestling. But the thing about the WWE that makes it so like viewed is that aspect of like people throwing chairs at other people, or people throwing people through tables. And when you look at other combat sports, it's not like that. But like still in the UFC, you have lots of fights where they end up in slugfest, where people like have broken noses and there's blood everywhere. So people like that kind of spectacle. How do you think you're gonna be able to basically attract a new audience, someone that isn't exactly a wrestling fan, to watch your championship?
Well, I'd say, I guess comparing to UFC would be not too bad of comparison, though. There will be occasionally some stuff, because one thing which kind of frustrates me as a fan watching it, even though knowing it's not real, is sometimes when there's, say, cheating going on behind the referee's back. In other sports like UFC or boxing, let's say you're a boxer, would you cheat behind the referee's back? And even if you did, there'll be caught on camera, and there'd be entire investigation or anything to overturn the result. In wrestling, the norm of the story is more like the referee's decision is final, and that creates more of a storytelling element, like the current AEW World Champion MJF. So he won the title in a big match on a pay-per-view, but referee was turned away from him. He used brass knuckles and knocked out Jon Moxley and became champion. And he's one of the biggest villains in wrestling right now. Yes.
Yeah, but it's that ridiculousness that everyone loves. I mean, it's saying crazy stuff like that. That's like, it's funny. It's over the top. It's ridiculous. It's entertaining. I think that's what attracts people to it. So I just don't see wrestling, like actual wrestling, ever getting to the same level as like UFC, because UFC and MMA is so violent. Like, because so like WWE, there's blood. There's people going through tables, chairs, ladders, people diving off Hell in a Cell. It's violent, but you know, we all know it's fake, but nonetheless, they're still attempting ridiculously dangerous stunts.
Definitely.
And the UFC, like, they're not flying off top ropes or anything like that, but at the same time, you have, you know, humongous guys beating the crap out of each other.
Oh, yeah.
There's blood, there's, you know, broken, people like that stuff. So, at both ends, like, well, yes, wrestling is fake, it is still extremely, you know, there's a lot of action, there's a lot of violence. MMA, on the other hand, is very, you know, realistic and technique oriented, but it's also a lot of violence. So I think I just don't, in my opinion, I just don't see like actual wrestling ever getting to that kind of level of violence to make it entertaining to the masses. So like my suggestion would be, whereas WWE has gone really PG within the last, you know, 20 years, go back to the Attitude Era, make it over the top, make it ridiculous again, make it, you know, extreme, have all the extremes from, like, you know, the 90s and the 80s, because that's what the people want, and that's not what the WWE is doing now. It's going in the opposite direction. I mean, they're trying to go back, but that would be my suggestion.
Yeah, I can see your point there. So, I know everything is for everyone, and I know not everyone's gonna be on board with this idea, but the goal is to at least provide something for those who want what I want, because, again, provide more variety. That's one of the goals, to provide more of another genre. And yeah, the UFC comparison is like not too bad, though I wouldn't say the fighting's be different. Like, going off of discussion with John, yeah, there can be ridiculous stuff, but I think if you present the illusion of a sporting league of some sorts, at least ridiculousness like with cheating and stuff, if you follow the rules of your own sports world that you established, I mean, yeah, it may not be as ridiculous, but it can still be entertaining, because there'll be more of a focus on feat strength and athleticism over overcoming like obstacles and whatnot that you'd see in like Greek mythology or something like that. And yeah, there will still be like crazy stuff like high-flying luchadors. You know, I mean, if we can afford to book them from Mexico or bring in some high flyers from out the country or other places, you know, and there will be occasionally maybe some extreme stuff. Again, it's more of following the rules, because if you have extreme rules, you can do anything you want, anything goes, but otherwise, it's more of a civil, more of an organized feel. Again, going back to Japanese wrestling, like New Japan Pro Wrestling has a show on Access TV every Thursdays at 9, which shows some matches on delay. And you can find Japanese wrestling on YouTube. It's a very different type of feel as opposed to the chaotic, intense American style, more or less. And I think that has potential to be replicated here in the US.
Awesome. Any other questions?
Yes.
So you were saying, like, because I grew up watching WWE, so you were saying how you wanted to kind of focus less on the stories and stuff like that, but like you can even look all the way back to like when wrestling and stuff first started, and main thing has always been the build up. It's always been those 10-minute in-ring monologues where it's just the wrestler just talking to everybody and they're just giving these almost heroic like speeches and things like that. So are you saying you're getting away from that, or just kind of not focused as much on it?
I mean, that could still be kind of a possibility, like the victory speech after winning a match. But like, if you look at other sports, you know, they don't really have, you know, guys coming out to the ring or the octagon and going on the microphone and talking. I'm not saying that's not entertaining, but from a sports perspective, I feel like that kind of takes away from what could be used for wrestling. And actually, another element of Japanese wrestling, which I've noticed, which might also be in other combat sports, post media scrums, where after the match, guys would go backstage and they would have like a backdrop of all the logos, the social medias, and just give their comments on the matches, which would probably be uploaded to social media. So at least give them some sort of platform to still talk and develop their character. But for the most part, I'd say more of the build-up will be more focused on the action.
Excellent, excellent. Thanks for contributing to this. Give a round of applause. It takes some courage just to come up here randomly and speak. Now, since we're dealing with operations management, this gentleman's idea, excellent idea, trying to be the next Vince McMahon in some capacity, right? The new Vince McMahon. We would think of process, right? So what's the point of applying this stuff to say your idea for your project plan? We have to think of the order of magnitude. What are the most important elements to begin with, to start, before we get to the detailed nuances of character evolution, story evolution, stuff like that. Most detailed things is like network. Where are we going to place these videos, this wrestling simulation at, right? We're working with major networks, or working with cable networks, local networks. Put it on YouTube Live, or put it on Facebook Live. Are you doing pay-per-view, right? Are you working with ESPN? Could you get a contract? Do they have a non-competitive contract because of whatever, WWE, UFC, whatever? That would be primary. So we're thinking of process first. Are you thinking of your major obstacles to begin with? Oh, there's venue, right? Where are you placing this at? You got the Octagon with the UFC, right? They're out in Vegas primarily. I'm like, well, are we all over the country, or are we just, do we move around like the WWE with the All-State Arena, or go to Texas and go to Florida? Or are we having everybody in a fixed place to begin with? Maybe it's more affordable to be in a fixed location. Maybe more affordable to be a traveling show of some sort. We talked about capital, obviously, first mover, right? You're trying to be Amazon, be the first Amazon or something like that. Capital intensive, it takes a ton of money to get people to believe in something that may not already have been proven specifically, but you can show that it has been proven already with the WWE. You're just putting your own spin on it, right? So to apply what we're trying to do here in this class is to think in detailed, almost like an engineer, step-by-step basis. Can you document that in some capacity, right? This is more important. We're gonna move from here to here to here. From there, we got writers who could convey excellent story for characters. We got new characters, because we don't want old recycled ones, right? Do you think that this would create more of a demand than otherwise? What are your alternatives and choices? So the point really of all of this operations management, and as we get into global supply chain, all of that, is to think of process. Like any idea, concept, business, how are the choices and decisions being made? What are the sequences of that? Does it work? Now, does it work? It's like, hey, I got the excellent idea, and that's it. That's not reality. We know that. Business is ongoing, dynamic changes. So start and solidify your first idea, but not thinking that it's the end-all, be-all of ideas, right? Like, this is what I'm doing first, right? As a plan, as a strategy. I know that down the line, if we could make $1 billion, we can have all this other extraneous stuff. But this is kind of how I want the plans to be. To be like, hey, what is my order of operations? This is primary, this is how this is gonna work, this is gonna flow to that, this will flow to that. and flexibility if A happens, and maybe B gets selected or something of the sort, right? And once again, I don't want it to be, too technical for people to come up here and, feel intimidated to talk about their ideas and plans, because that's just always a difficult thing to do. But to literally just be like, hey, I got my 2-minute spiel, a 2-minute plan that if I'm in the elevator, I meet a very important guy, got a ton of money who might potentially give it to me for my idea. What do I tell him about it, right? So keep that in mind, have that general sort of approach to your business, like, yeah, this might work, I think this will work, we're basing off assumptions, not like we've already tested, proven it so much. But just thinking of in detailed format of process, right? And that's how this class makes sense. Because I will say, honestly speaking, it's one of the most challenging courses to get, right? Because you're just like, man, I get what you're saying, but then it could be lost, right? So operations management for anybody, I took as an undergrad, MBA, all that stuff. It's still one of the most driest classes to teach. And if you don't really get it, it's more of an engineering class. Like, how do you choose? Do you make good choices? How rational are you, or logical are you? What's the step-by-step process you come, right? To come to the conclusion. Anybody else want to share their idea? You can do it in 2 minutes. You don't have to be extremely detailed. Yes? And this is wonderful, because we get to hear, this is the best part, right? Yeah, you have submit stuff online on the Blackboard, that's fine, but there's nothing better than talking and sharing. Man, I got an idea, I think this would be more efficient. Have you thought about doing this, right? This exchange is so important because it helps the person realize, man, I didn't think of that, right?
So my idea is a athletic brand called Nature Fit, where we basically make all of our products out of recycled plastic textiles. This is based off of the assumption that we could scale up other companies' production methods. There are companies that collect their own plastic from the ocean and landfills right now that make bracelets and sell them with other products. And I would just be looking to scale that up into making enough material to make clothing like shirts and shorts, and later on shoes like soccer cleats, because soccer is my passion. And then I guess some of the main difficulties would be trying to break into a market where like the top dogs are just so far ahead. Yeah, you have New Balance and Under Armour like competing, but like you just have Nike and Adidas just being completely at the top of the market in basically all sports right now. So that would be the big issue of trying to break into it. But I think with the niche of making all of our products out of recycled textiles, we could really focus on our target market of 18 to 35-year-old people, because studies have shown that they are more likely to be interested in the sustainability aspect of a company. And yeah, that's the
Yeah, I think that's an excellent idea, sustainability, right? It's circular. Maybe at some point you're like, well, turn in your old shoes, we'll get 20% off, because when you use your old shoes to make new shoes, right? So you can use all that. But what are some of like the biggest hurdles you think coming up?
finding enough money to scale up. So the plan for the business is to outsource the procurement of the textiles, but the goal is to have all of our manufacturing in the United States, and also build a brand off of being made in the US. Because I think where an item is made also has an impact on what people view as sustainable or not equality, but
Eco-friendly?
eco-friendly, but I'm trying to
Explain it another way.
more like justified, like they're like, oh, these people have laws that ensure that their workers are getting paid fairly or treated fairly, whereas here you don't really know if you're getting a product from a factory that like doesn't treat its workers well, or from a factory that does treat its workers well.
Yeah.
So basically creating a brand around respect and people believing in that we're doing the right thing.
All right, so you're selling a value system as well too, right? I support people who have some sort of ethical mantra about how things should work in society, which is extremely valuable in the society we live in now. Now, your cost structure, you say you're gonna do it in the US, you think that might be a challenge as opposed to sourcing cheap recycled plastic materials elsewhere?
So, outsourcing, by outsourcing, I mean the materials, so like the plastics, we could gather them from wherever, and then outsource the creation of the actual textiles to a different country. But all of our assembly and all of our tooling would be in the United States. So I guess the biggest hurdle for like final assembly would be, one, finding the workers that know how to do it, and two, finding enough capital to basically create new factories in which we can work with the materials, because the plastic textile materials, they have different challenges with working with them. That's why many companies right now that are working with them, they only do small stuff like bracelets or small jewelry items, but we're looking to like basically scale up by 100 times, making all sorts of different things. So the main issue would be building completely new tooling in factories, either already like pre-owned buildings or making our own buildings where we could fit the all the machines and processes.
Any questions or comments?
Yeah. I'm not trying to dog on your idea or anything, but like me as a person, you know, I look at recycled things and I think, well, are these possibly weaker than fresh materials? Like, what, do you have like any answer to that thought?
So the textile that I was looking at is mainly made from recycled plastic water bottles, which have a thicker, more durable type of plastic than, let's say, plastic bottles or any type of, or even plastic containers. So plastic bottles and plastic containers, when you melt them down and you basically take them apart into the core of their makeup, you can basically make a string style like textile that's similar to fishing line. And if you looked at other company, or if you look at other companies like Nike or Adidas, they make a lot of their shoes and their products out of polyester, and a lot of their shoes, especially for soccer or even basketball, they have knitted materials out of yarn and other synthetic materials that are not recycled. But the polyester that they extract is fresh, but the polyester that you can extract from recycled materials, this shows right now in preliminary like studies, because there's not a lot of studies out on the true strength of them right now, doesn't show like too far of a drop off between recycled polyester and fresh polyester.
So durability and quality is kind of one of your selling points to the customer?
Right now, there doesn't seem to be much of a difference.
Now, is your items gonna be cost, like price structure be similar to like Adidas, Nike, Puma, or?
Similar to the, well, we're trying to hit the mid-range. Well, when we start the business, the plan is to hit the entry-level price of Puma. Right now, Puma is like the third option after Nike and Adidas. But they offer things like, for example, soccer shoes. Nike offers a $280 soccer cleat for the top-end model, but Puma's top-end model is $200. It's almost $80 cheaper. So we're gonna be trying to hit that 200 price range for a soccer cleat, for example, to be underneath Nike and Adidas, but create our own niche where we can build from there in the future.
Anybody else? Comment?
I like the idea because I know that Nike's like doing it with a few of their shoes. I haven't seen anything like really with cleats or anything like that. But would you, so like what's really popular for like cleats is like leather still. So like Tiempos and like Puma's got a whole leather line, and Adidas does too. So would you still be able to like incorporate leather into like having, let's say, like the sole plate is made out of like your recycled like materials, but then like, you know, the whole forefoot is made out of like leather? Would you guys still do that, or is that something you'd shy away from?
So that is something in the future that we would consider. I know you're talking about the Tiempos. Nike combines their Flyknit material with their leather material in their Flyknit models, or in their Tiempo models, where the back of the shoe is Flyknit, but the front forefoot where you would be touching the ball, striking the ball, it is leather. That is something we would look into, but that would be later on down the road once we've established ourselves in the market, and we would see if our material is as compatible as Flyknit is with leather or any other alternative.
So, but do you think incorporating non-recyclable materials will take away from your image or your brand of like identifying as something completely different than what the others are doing?
It
Or would you try to really stick to just sticking to recyclable materials?
Well, for the business, I would like to diversify completely, so we would have our soccer department, or we would have basically our overall sports department where we focus on like soccer, basketball, everything, other sports that we would be into, and then our, clothing or apparel line. So we'd have basically under the same business, but two different umbrellas or two different structures. So my main goal is to keep the like apparel and everything, just focus on the sustainability and the recycled materials. And then based on demand, or if we see that like our consumers are wanting a type of materials to be incorporated, then we could change that like specific to the item or sport or department where the demand would be.
Alright, before you go, what do you think is the number one sort of priority you need to focus on? Is it marketing, is it manufacturing, is it finance, like what is the?
I'd probably say marketing. It would definitely be marketing because all these other brands, they sponsor top athletes and they sponsor top teams and they sponsor influencers on social media already that promote their products. Not just through like normal means, through like TV commercials or ads on YouTube, but like people see like Messi wearing Adidas shoes or Ronaldo wearing Nike shoes and they think, oh, my favorite athlete wears that, so I wanna wear that too. So I think marketing, finding someone that we could work with for a reasonable price that could get our product into the like eyes of the general public, I guess that would be the biggest issue or the biggest hurdle at the beginning.
Any other questions?
So I remember Nike, I don't know if they still do it or not, I remember Nike had like their recycling program where like, they say like you recycle shoes, like you return to new shoes and things like that. Would you have something similar or?
We would definitely take your old shoes and give you money for them, but we wouldn't do what Nike did, so to say, where they take your old shoes and they basically make you a new pair of the same shoe. So we could definitely like offer a promotion or like an ability to like turn in your old shoes, and then we would give you a sum of money depending on the condition or the type of materials used in them and if we could use them. But it wouldn't be the same as Nike where like turn in your shoes, you get a new pair for a lower price.
Have you talked about this in any other classes?
Yeah.
You got a presentation on this already?
That's why I looked into like buying the actual textiles from like other countries that already have the factories to make the textiles. So that would be less capital needed at the beginning. So then we can focus more on the actual like manufacturing in the US aspect.
Alright, excellent, thanks.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Wanna talk about this wonderful idea? What happened to my coffee person? Are you still?
Yeah,
You still gonna do coffee?
Yeah, I want to do it, but I want to see how can I promote the thing around the university, and also I didn't explain last class, but there's like a sustainability part of the coffee, like where does the product come from, and I do think that I have to insist on that because that's a huge issue nowadays, so I will focus on that too.
Yeah, there's a lot of issues like where there's like ethically sourced,
Yeah.
Places that aren't harming the environment,
Yeah,
things like that. Alright, great. Alright, let's get to the rest of this lecture. So yeah, try to have in the rest of your, it's all about 7 already posted, try to have the rest of your project plans up there by, at least by next class. If you have it by Sunday, midnight, that'll be even better. I like these ideas a lot, and this also helps each one of you as you're actually I know some of you, these are your real, sort of grant-winning ideas and what you want to do. This helps you to work on people asking the hard questions about it, right? Which helps you kind of narrow down how this should go, right? From the beginning. We talked a little bit about process strategy, last time, things of that nature. Let me ask you guys, do you think that right now in our society, do we have more product-focused industries or businesses, or more service-focused industries or business in our country? Yes?
In the United States, I'd say it's more service focused, but if you're looking at a worldwide scale, most countries still focus on their products and their export of raw materials.
So why do you think we used to be a heavily manufactured country, right? Products, so why do you think that kind of transitioned into being more service-based?
I don't know like all the factors, but I guess one factor could be like more emphasis on education and people not wanting to work necessarily in factories or with manual labor, people wanting to work more office jobs or like follow their passions. So I guess a more shift towards education and higher education rather than the standard like how it was in the past where like you take shop in high school and then you just go, after high school you don't go to college, you just kind of do something in the trades.
Yeah, that makes sense. Somebody else want to say something?
I'd say in general, I mean, everyone's noticed it, subscription-based services, such as streaming services, instead of just paying for cable, now there's like pretty much a streaming service for every studio out there. And also Uber for ride sharing, Uber Eats, DoorDash, Grubhub, all the delivery apps out there.
Yeah, absolutely. But think of all of that, like what you're talking about is basically, there's an expansion of information and technology. That's what changed everything. The customer's way more informed than it used to be. Our country's way more informed. We're able to trade with other people, and guess what? We don't do everything the best, right? Every country may do everything the best based on their actual resources. Why was China the greatest in manufacturing for all that time? Human labor, human capital. They have the most human beings for any country on earth, right? Other places, they don't grow that crop. That crop doesn't grow there. So therefore, a certain product may not be available, right? So as technology advanced, people became more aware and intelligent, and then actually they gave more feedback, right? And able to hurt companies too. So now we're able to even go on Yelp and destroy, a company with bad reviews, bad ratings and stuff. So service is extremely important, because not like the old days, if you got what you got, and that was it. Now you can come back and say, hey, I also have some power too, as a consumer, right? I have the power to tell other people that this is a crappy product. Power to tell other people that this is a crappy service. So we're not really product nor service based. Think of everything as really a hybrid, not everything, but most is really a hybrid, right? You go to a restaurant, you do got a product, you ate the food. But you also have a service, right? The service is the server, the cook, the environment, whether you like it or not, the location of the place, all of that too. So think of, we always, maybe try to emphasize one or another, but most things are integrated. Most things provide a little bit of service, but you're still getting something that's a physical thing for the most part. Let's see. Okay, well, here's our. So when we talked about strategy and process on whether produce things, are we going to produce one good and just produce a mass amount of that good? Are we gonna break up the goods, and now we're gonna produce a second thing because it might be cheaper to create a second thing as opposed to just expanding the first thing, right? We're thinking of these decisions and actions to make. Here, we have an application in which we're putting bicycle frames together, welded. So the bicycle frames need to be welded as part of their coming together. And here, this company is deciding whether to weld bicycle frames manually or to purchase a welding robot, right? Initially, what would you think would be better? Like if you owned a bicycle shop, part of creating a bicycle is a huge welding process, part of putting it together. What would some of your initial thoughts to be like? Are you saying like, would you just buy the machine to do the welding outright? Would you put in specialized welders in there to begin with? What would be some of your initial thoughts starting a bicycle company? Automated or manual? Yep. What would you think?
First thing I would decide is maybe, do I have a market big enough to actually like get a welding, like a welding machine and people who are specialized in welding, because maybe that could get really, really expensive if I'm not selling bikes as fast as like Huffy and all those major bike brands. Maybe that might be a waste of money.
Yeah, it might be a ton of money for a manual welder, right? Because you have to pay all the extra stuff, right? Pay people for health insurance and all this extra stuff. Whereas machines don't have those feelings, right? Machines don't have to take off work, machines just automatically run. But then you like, well, machines are extremely expensive. Getting somebody to hire, I can just hire them for $25 an hour, do the job. It makes more sense maybe up front. Long term, maybe the transition. But if you're like, well, I think there's a high demand for this bike, maybe we go ahead and do get the very expensive machine, because our thing is to do mass, right? People want a certain bike, and we're gonna be able to produce a ton of them. So you gotta make some decisions, right? So here's the issue with trying to make a decision here. So if welded manually, investment costs for equipment are only $10,000, right? So you need basic equipment for your welder to put the frames together. The per unit cost of manually welding a bicycle frame is $50 per frame, right? On the other hand, if you go with a robot, you got it capable of performing the same work, which will cost $400,000 initially for the robot. But the robot's operating cost is variable cost, including support labor, are just $20 per frame. Here they're talking about what volume would the company be indifferent to these alternative methods. So here's some basic calculations, right? So here we're looking at the 10,000 minus the 400,000 divided by the 20 minus the $50. And then it would take 13,000 frames to essentially justify buying automated, right? So you can calculate at which point will we essentially kind of break even, right? Which point will you make? And you're like, hey, my demand, I expect to sell more than 13,000 frames, maybe in the first quarter or the first year. So you can do a calculation and say, like, based on the demand, which decision should I make? Makes sense. So we have fixed automation and flexible programmable automation. What could be like an idea of the two? What's the difference between the two? Who give an example? Or like in what industry does you see differences? Think of car manufacturing, right? So you have some programmable things that could do multiple things, right? They're flexible. They could do, they could assemble multiple parts of a vehicle all together. But then you have a standard machine that just simply, on an assembly line that literally just produces 1 million of the same things going over and over and over again, right? And then you got automated service processes. Here we kind of talked about last class of all this competitive priority versus process choice. Here we got focus by process segments, plants within plants. So you do have your idea with your clothing, right? Is it all being done all together under the same roof? Or are you essentially compartmentalizing things for different functions in different areas, right? So are like shoes being made also where the shirts are being made, or the shirts being made where the hats are being made? Is the sports equipment being made around the same exact area, right? Or are you segmenting these things into different areas? So different operations within a facility, individualized competitive priorities and processes. Re-engineering, the fundamental rethinking, radical design, right? Basically not recreating the wheel, reinventing the wheel, but taking something that already existed and sort of re-engineering. It's somewhat of your idea, you know, you're taking the concept of WWE, but you're adding some new things that may have been overlooked, because the environment's changed, things have changed, right? The way people respond to wrestling has changed also too. And it's there to improve the performance dramatically in terms of cost, quality, service, and speed. Think of this with Netflix. Right? Netflix rethought cable, and now everybody I know got rid of cable. Right? Cable's useless. Why? They just subscribe. As long as I got an internet connection, I can just get Hulu, Netflix, what have you. So Netflix essentially re-engineered about content, how we get content, entertainment content. It works. The same would go for like Uber too. Key elements, critical process, strong leadership, cross-functional teams. All this is pretty self-explanatory. And process analysis, basically taking all this information and being able to put it in a document for someone to see it. It needs to be presented to a manager, an investor, an owner, right, to understand how things are gonna be performed and how things can be designed. So here for improvement model, anybody ever heard of Six Sigma? Ever? Really? People get Six Sigma certifications, right? And that's basically just to improve, quality performance and lower the amount of errors people get them in manufacturing in order to observe how the manufacturing process works and how to decrease the number of errors in the things that we're producing, right? So it's highly valuable. People who have this Six Sigma certification make well over $150,000, you know, just coming out of business school or whatever, because their certification shows to be kind of detailed more in this kind of thinking as opposed to just general marketing, general management, general finance, things like that. So Six Sigma is huge, because once again, it's almost like an engineering framework. So what's your projects or any other project for that matter, right? Define what the thing is, define what the process is gonna be, right? Be able to measure it in some capacity. You don't have to get too technical, but be able to have some sort of measurement against competitors or the process itself. Be able to analyze the process proper analysis. What could be done to improve, because all things always need some sort of improvement over time. And how you can control all of that, how you can control those improvements and control the quality. All right, I'll end there. And any other questions before we go? All right, so you guys have a good weekend and hopefully